An officer pulls you over. Maybe it's for speeding, maybe a broken taillight, maybe you drifted a little too close to the shoulder. Nothing serious. You lower your window, hand over your license, and expect a warning. But then the officer's flashlight sweeps across your passenger seat, and suddenly the tone changes. Step out of the vehicle. Your heart drops. Because sitting inside your car are three things millions of Americans carry every single day: a pocket knife, a pill bottle, and a heavy flashlight. Ordinary objects. But during a traffic stop, ordinary objects can quickly become something else entirely: a concealed weapon, a controlled substance violation, or even possession of criminal instruments. And the scariest part? Most people accidentally talk themselves into these charges without realizing it. Tonight, we're breaking down the dangerous legal gray areas hidden inside routine traffic stops, exposing how everyday items can suddenly trigger felony investigations, and the exact mistakes that make situations spiral out of control. Because sometimes the difference between freedom and felony charges comes down to a few words spoken on the side of the road. And if you believe every item in your car is automatically harmless because you use it legally, you may be dangerously mistaken. If you care about your rights, your freedom, and protecting yourself during police encounters, subscribe now, because understanding the law before the stop happens could save you from making the worst mistake of your life. Let's begin. First, the pocket knife. One of the most common tools in America. Construction workers carry them, hunters carry them, mechanics carry them, drivers keep them in glove compartments for emergencies. To most people, it's just a utility tool. But during a traffic stop, officers may see something very different: a weapon. And depending on your state, that simple distinction can instantly change everything. Many drivers assume if a knife is sold legally, carrying it in a car must also be legal. That assumption gets people arrested every year, because knife laws are some of the most confusing laws in the country. Different states regulate blade length, automatic opening mechanisms, concealment, intent, accessibility inside the vehicle. In some jurisdictions, a knife clipped inside a pocket is legal. The same knife hidden under a seat may suddenly become a concealed weapon offense. And if prosecutors believe the knife was intended for use against another person, felony enhancements can appear very quickly, especially if officers claim the knife was connected to another alleged offense. Now here's where traffic stops become dangerous. The officer asks, "Why do you have this knife?" Most drivers panic and start over-explaining. "For protection. I carry it in case somebody attacks me. It's for self-defense." That answer may sound innocent, but legally, you may have just helped establish intent. Intent matters enormously in criminal law. The moment an object is framed as a weapon instead of a tool, prosecutors gain leverage, especially in states with strict concealed weapons statutes. This is why attorneys constantly warn people not to volunteer unnecessary explanations during police encounters, because your own words can transform the legal meaning of the object. Now, to be very clear, lawful self-defense rights absolutely exist, but roadside interrogations are not the place to argue constitutional law with armed officers. The side of the road is not a courtroom, and many people unknowingly give statements that prosecutors later use against them. So what should you do instead? Stay calm, stay respectful, and avoid volunteering detailed explanations. You can identify the object if legally required, but you do not need to build the prosecution's narrative for them. Simple responses are often safer than emotional speeches. Remember, officers are collecting information. Every statement matters. Every reaction matters. And many felony cases begin with people talking far too much during moments of stress. Now let's move to item number 2, the unlabeled pill bottle. This one destroys lives, because millions of perfectly legal prescription users unknowingly create criminal suspicion every day. Picture this. An officer searches your vehicle after claiming probable cause. Maybe they say they smelled marijuana. Maybe they claim they saw suspicious movement. Maybe consent was given accidentally. Then they discover loose pills inside a plastic container. No label, no prescription information. Immediately, the stop changes tone. Because unidentified pills create massive legal problems, officers may suspect illegal narcotics. Intent to distribute. Possession without a valid prescription or controlled substance violations, even if the medication legally belongs to you. And here's the frightening reality. Many people transfer prescription medication into travel containers for convenience, especially pain medication, anxiety medication, ADHD medication, sleep medication. But certain prescriptions are heavily regulated controlled substances, Without proper labeling, officers may claim they cannot verify lawful possession on the roadside. Now suddenly you're sitting in handcuffs trying to explain why legally prescribed pills are sitting inside an unlabeled bottle. And again, most people make the situation worse by panicking. They start rambling. They're my cousins. I forgot where I got them. I think it's anxiety medication. I don't remember the prescription. Those statements create inconsistencies, and inconsistencies create suspicion. Officers are trained to look for contradictory answers because conflicting stories are commonly associated with criminal behavior. This is why calm communication matters so much. You do not want to guess, you do not want to speculate, and you definitely do not want to lie, because false statements can become separate criminal issues entirely. Now there's another hidden danger people rarely discuss: mixed medications. Some drivers combine different pills into one container to save space. Legally, that can become a nightmare, because once pills are separated from official labeling, identifying lawful possession becomes far more complicated, especially if multiple controlled substances are involved. And prosecutors do not always interpret confusion generously. Now, does that automatically mean felony charges will happen? No, absolutely not. But the investigation itself can become aggressive very quickly. Vehicles get searched, phones get examined, passengers get questioned, and ordinary people suddenly find themselves treated like suspected traffickers. This is why criminal defense attorneys constantly recommend keeping prescription medication inside original labeled containers whenever possible. Not because you're guilty, but because clarity reduces ambiguity, and ambiguity during traffic stops often benefits law enforcement, not drivers. Now let's talk about the third item, the flashlight. Yes, a flashlight. Sounds ridiculous, right? But this is where dual-use objects become legally dangerous. A dual-use object is something with both lawful and potentially unlawful uses, and officers sometimes classify heavy flashlights as impact weapons, particularly oversized metal flashlights. Now obviously most people carry flashlights for completely legitimate reasons: breakdowns, emergencies, night driving, power outages, but context changes everything during police encounters. Imagine an officer discovers a heavy flashlight, gloves, a hoodie, tools, and cash. Separately, each item may appear harmless. Together, police may claim the items suggest burglary tools or criminal preparation. Again, intent becomes central, and intent is often inferred from circumstances, statements, location, and officer interpretation. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of criminal law. Objects themselves are not always illegal, but prosecutors sometimes argue the surrounding context transforms lawful items into evidence of criminal intent. That's why roadside conversations matter so much. An officer asks, "Why do you carry this flashlight?" A nervous driver jokes, "To defend myself if somebody messes with me." That joke may not sound serious to you, but recorded statements can sound very different later in reports or court proceedings, especially when combined with other suspicious factors officers claim to observe. Now here's something critically important. Many drivers do not realize traffic stops are psychological pressure environments. The lights, the authority, the fear, the uncertainty, all of it pushes people to keep talking. People believe explaining more will clear everything up. Sometimes it does, but sometimes every additional sentence creates new legal exposure. And this is where many innocent people accidentally damage their own cases, because they misunderstand one crucial fact. Police are allowed to ask investigative questions. You are not required to talk endlessly. You have constitutional protections, including the right to remain silent. But invoking rights correctly matters. Aggressive behavior rarely helps. Hostility rarely helps. Arguing law on the roadside rarely helps. Calm professionalism is usually far safer. Now let's discuss the biggest mistake drivers make during these encounters. Consent searches. This changes everything. An officer says, "You don't mind if I take a quick look inside, right?" The wording sounds casual, friendly even. Many people automatically say yes because they fear refusing makes them look guilty. But legally, consent can dramatically expand police access to your vehicle. Once consent is granted, many legal protections become far more complicated to challenge later, and drivers often consent during moments of stress without understanding the consequences. Now, to be clear, laws vary significantly by state, and there are situations where officers may search vehicles without consent. But voluntary consent removes one of the strongest protections drivers have. That's why many defense attorneys recommend polite but clear responses like, "I do not consent to searches." Notice the wording: calm, respectful, non-confrontational, not aggressive, not insulting, just clear. Because asserting rights professionally is very different from escalating conflict. Now, another dangerous moment happens after officers discover questionable items. Silence. People panic during silence. So they start filling it with nervous explanations, and that's when contradictions happen. One minute they say the knife is for camping, then they say self-defense, then they say work. Now officers perceive inconsistency, and inconsistency becomes suspicious. This is why staying composed matters so much. You do not need to perform innocence. You do not need lengthy speeches, and you should never guess answers you are uncertain about. Now let's address something extremely important. This video is not telling criminals how to hide evidence. This is about ordinary lawful citizens understanding how quickly innocent situations become criminal investigations. Because many people genuinely do carry utility knives, prescription medications, emergency tools. The danger comes from legal ambiguity, officer interpretation, inconsistent statements, and misunderstanding constitutional rights during stressful encounters. And unfortunately, once felony allegations appear, the consequences can become life-changing even before conviction. Job loss, arrests, vehicle impoundment, legal fees, public records, professional license issues, even dismissed charges can leave lasting damage. That's why understanding these encounters matters so much. Now let's talk about what smart drivers should do during traffic stops. First, stay calm and keep your movements visible. Sudden reaching creates danger and tension instantly. Second, provide legally required identification and documents when requested. Third, avoid volunteering unnecessary information. Short, respectful communication is usually safer than emotional over-explaining. Fourth, never physically resist officers, even if you believe the stop is unlawful. Courtrooms settle legality disputes far more safely than roadside confrontations. Fifth, if you choose to invoke rights, do so calmly and clearly, not aggressively. And finally, understand your local laws. Because state laws regarding knives, medications, weapons, and vehicle searches differ dramatically. What is legal in one state may create criminal exposure in another. Ignorance of local statutes does not stop arrests from happening. Now imagine this scenario. A driver keeps a legal pocket knife, prescription medication without labeling, a heavy flashlight. Individually, maybe none of those items trigger major concern. But during a stressful stop, nervous behavior, conflicting answers, consent searches, officer assumptions, suddenly everything changes. Now prosecutors begin constructing narratives, and narratives are powerful, especially when supported by the driver's own statements. That's why the smartest thing you can carry in your vehicle is not a weapon. It's knowledge. Knowledge of your rights, knowledge of your local laws, knowledge of how police encounters actually work. Because television has taught people that innocence automatically protects them. Real life is far more complicated. Sometimes innocent people say the wrong thing. Sometimes lawful objects get misinterpreted. Sometimes ordinary traffic stops spiral into criminal investigations within minutes. And once words are spoken, you cannot take them back. That's why preparation matters before the lights ever appear behind your car. If this video opened your eyes, subscribe right now. Because every week we break down real legal dangers hidden inside everyday police encounters, self-defense situations, constitutional rights, and criminal investigations most people never see coming until it's too late. And if you think this information could protect someone you care about, share this video with them. Because one misunderstood traffic stop can change a life forever. Stay informed, stay calm, and know your rights.